Hello, you're listening to Recalibrate and Go, a podcast brought to you by Aptude. I'm your host, Michael Foster. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Part 2 of our conversation with Jack Recinto. He is an IT manager. He knows this business better than most, and we're lucky to have him. We're talking about how things are going to change. You know, we're all getting adjusted to this new normal. Well, when the virus goes away, when we're all expected to go back into the office, will it be business as usual? You know, after the dot-com bust and 9/11, as well as the Great Recession, everyone thought that so much was going to change. But it really didn't. Will it be different this time? I have absolutely no idea, but we're going to take our best educated guess. And then maybe a few months from now, we'll have Jack back and we'll talk about whether or not we got it right. Regardless, it's going to be an interesting conversation, continuing the conversation from our last podcast. And like I've said, we're new to this. We're learning the ropes, so the audio quality may not be 100%. I mean, let's be honest, I'm not even at 100%. I sound like a poor man's Glenn Washington from Snap Judgment. I get it. I know. But I'm doing the best I can. And I think that even though the audio quality may not be the best, the information certainly is. So, thanks for joining us. Part 2, Jack Recinto. Let's go. First of all, I mean, thank you for giving us such an extensive viewpoint, because there's so much that we have to consider. And I wanted to ask you a little bit too, because you talk about the 9 to 5 thing, and this has come up a few times, is that, like, for example, like me, like my routine hasn't changed much. I only have 2 dogs. They're pretty, they're pretty low maintenance. You know, I don't have to spend 7 hours teaching them anything. That's first of all, and they're already pretty bright. Actually, it's funny because I have Linus. He's a deaf cattle dog, and we got Casper, who was rescued from a laboratory. Spent the first 4 years of his life in a cage, and they're actually celebrities. You know, my wife and I take him for walks. Like, people come up, you know, back in the day when you can come up to people,
right?
They would be like, "Oh my God, is that Linus and Casper?" Like, they were more famous than you know. It's like, yeah, I try to get them to sign autographs.
That's awesome.
I don't have to worry about it. I mean, I wake up maybe 10 minutes later than I used to, and then I get dressed. I actually, like, I do the whole mannerism of going to work, and then I sit at my computer at the same time I would have, and then my day basically plays out almost exactly the same. Now, obviously, not everybody's going to have that. And also, too, let's be honest, some people don't have that working style.
Right.
You know, some people, even when you were going to the office 8 to 5, every day. Some people they spend 4 hours doing great work and 4 hours hanging off at the water cooler, because that's just their biorhythm.
Right.
So is there any way to gauge that? Is it just a matter of just being open and honest with your employees? Like, how would you start calibrating people's, like, working, how they work?
Sure. Well, and that's a really good question, a really, really good question that I'm sure a lot of people would like the answer to. This is not kind of a one size fits all, unfortunately, because you're going to have different types of organizations you're working with. There's going to be some severely conservative organizations out there where everyone is used to working at the same time every day, and they've done this for years, and this is what they enjoy, and this is what they expect, and they don't need the kind of disruption that we've actually got now. And then you've got more of these kind of agile, flexible type situations where you may not have a team of employees that work together all in the same office at the same time. And in a lot of ways, our modern society has kind of already started addressing some of these issues. I mean, the fact that we have globalization now, where you can actually be working with somebody on the other side of the world who, by the time you're clocking in, they're clocking out. Or maybe, you know, there is a bigger time gap there where they haven't been on the system for a few hours before you actually get on. Situations like that kind of speak to the fact that maybe people don't have to always be face to face and don't always have to be in the same room together in order to get work done. Taking that into consideration with the technology that we have, particularly like with Zooms and with Skypes and Microsoft Teams and other applications that allow us to kind of get together, have video conferences, and work on things together. These are the kinds of technologies and I guess you could say strategies to help us point out exactly where these shortcomings are in the business with regards to maybe the circadian rhythm that the employees have. It does come down to a matter of goal setting. What is the goals and the strategies of the company? Are you looking to kind of be more on that progressive side where you're like, hey, we're goal oriented. We want you to actually produce. And if you're better to produce in these 4 hours and you make the deadlines that you have to, we'll pay you for that 8-hour day because we don't really care about whether you're sitting there or not. If you're responsive to your emails, because we all have smartphones now and there's no getting away from that. If you're responsive to your emails, if you accomplish the goals that you have set and you make your deadlines, we don't really care what amount of time it takes you as long as you're putting out a good product that works. That doesn't work for everyone because, as I said, there are companies out there that are more along the lines of we want to see you online for the 8 hours you're supposed to be online, and that's that. So you've got to really look at what you want for your company, what your goals are, and then what your PR is. Because when you're going to be looking for some of those really great employees, they already know, particularly now, if there's anything that COVID-19 has opened up the eyes of the employee in, is that, hey, I can work from home. There's no reason why I can't accomplish what I'm doing now. So this is kind of like letting that genie out of the bottle. And companies are really going to have to look back at themselves and start thinking about their culture that they have. Because down the line, if you want the best and the brightest employees to really bring your company to success, then you're going to have to be more open to ideas like this.
Is this a generation? You don't have to go too in depth. Is this a generational thing?
In a lot of ways, there's always the individuals, and I always hate to generalize things like that. All of us are creatures of habit. Humans are creatures of habit. When you do anything for longer than 21 days, the odds are you're going to continue doing it that same way until you decide to make changes, and that has to be implemented for 21 days. So we're basically creatures of habit. Now, when you talk about doing something for decades, I mean, and I actually fall into this myself, being in technology and everything. When you do something for decades, you kind of get this level of comfort with what you know, and you're happy with it. And then the question of, well, if I change this, what's going to happen? Where am I going to be? Comes up. And people always fear change because it may be worse than the situation you have now. And so in situations like that, you're going to get kind of this generational difference where you have the boomers who are used to this, adhering to that and wanting to stick to it. And you have Gen Xers who actually were in the cusp of all these changes. And then millennials who were born into them, now embracing them because this is the way of life that they have grown accustomed to and know and love. So there are going to be those differences from that. But I have run into some very progressive boomers who are like, yeah, I'm fine working from home. I can do all this. And then they're on their smartphones and they're conducting Zoom meetings and all sorts of crazy stuff. So it isn't, there's always the individuals in there. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think that it's kind of the older generations that are going to be more structured and need that structure as opposed to maybe the Gen Xers or the millennials.
You know, it's funny because, there's that whole okay boomer movement and everyone's
Yeah,
always ripping
exactly.
up. But I can imagine Gen X, by the time we're 60, 70 years old, we're going to be so set in our ways from all these disasters. We're going to be the worst. Okay. They're going to, I ain't touching
Yeah, we're
any of
still going to
that.
be cranky. We're going to be cranky.
Get out of that virtual world. Get back into the real world, please.
Well, it's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that, Michael, because I was talking to my son who jumps onto all of these different games, and he likes VR. He's got an Oculus, and he likes to play Roblox and Minecraft and stuff. And I'm like, you should go out and play with your friends. And now I'm telling him, you know what? Play with your friends online. So it just tells you how quickly things have changed.
And I can't give any Gen Zers crap for that because I'm right now already 10, 15 hours into Persona 5 Royal on the PlayStation 4. So
there you go.
And being a gamer right now is actually a great thing because it keeps us inside. And now for a quick break. These are crazy times, man. And we recognize all of your overall strategies might be taking a back seat to the immediate priorities of the moment. But as we get through this, Aptude will be ready with options to get those projects back on track. contain costs while providing quality deliverables so that you can get more done. We're here to help. Whether or not you need services right now or just want to have a friendly, free-flowing, brainstorming chat about your current situation, don't hesitate to reach out. We're Aptude, keeping you one step ahead of the curve. So getting into the last question, of course, is that, and this is the one that makes fools of all of us, 6 months from now, like, what does the scene look like? Where are companies going to be? Where do they need to be? What's going to be the big problem that needs to be solved by then? I know that's a big one.
I know. I like to think that this COVID-19 will be over within 6 months. That the optimist speaking in me. From a pessimistic side, I see this going on for a year, and that's just how I feel personally about it. In these particular cases, looking at it that way, the ideal that I would like to see is that companies kind of realize that their cultures no longer are applicable in this new environment. And they also embrace the fact that this environment's not going to change because basically, as I said, the genie's been let out of the bottle. People know they don't have to be in the office to accomplish things. And hopefully what they will be doing is they will be engaging more in kind of remote team building exercises and stuff like that, so that you still continue to have those water cooler talks and things like that. Maybe they're a little more scheduled. You're not going to run into somebody having coffee or something like that. But if you have that time spelled out and it's regular where people are like, yeah, this is what I'm doing at this point in time. I'm catching up with my team. You know, we're not going to talk about work. We're just going to talk about the shows we watch or something like that. Have that water cooler talk and things. It's going to be a change to that. So ultimately, I hope that within 6 months, those culture changes will have taken place and people will feel more comfortable with where they are and with the new way of work. And as I said, I think that we do, as organizations, have to look at where our employees are, what kind of situation they're in at home, since they're going to be working there from now on, and kind of being more understanding of the challenges that they could be facing in those situations and supportive in the fact that, like you said, maybe 9 to 5 doesn't work for them. Maybe they can accomplish their job in 4 hours. We don't see them online for the 8 hours, but at the end of the day, they answer their emails, they send in their jobs, and they get their deadlines met and everything. There's no point for them to put in that 8 hours. They're still accomplishing what the company needs from a goal level and still putting out the products and the quality that the company is expecting. With that in mind, we also want to look at technologies that will kind of broaden out and make those employees more productive. So we've got to look into some of the stuff that was done manually and start looking at how we can automate some of those practices so that people don't have to go into the offices to maybe make 30 copies or something like that. Maybe take that move toward more of the electronic documentation, more of the electronic signatures, or coming up with some other solutions that actually can suffice for that so that the jobs can still get done, but from a more efficient and, I guess, less paper-based way, kind of making sure that when we're moving forward, we're not looking behind and taking a step back or expecting to come back from this. Because, Michael, my personal opinion is this is something we're not going to come back from. This has changed our society so substantially. I can't see us stepping back into where we were. This is the birth of a new culture, basically, at this point.
It's funny because, like, after the 9/11 tragedy and the dot-com, which kind of gets roped together now, there was kind of a 1-2 punch, and then the Great Recession, there was always this talk like, oh, this is going to change work forever. It's going to change work forever. And it kind of did, but it seemed like a lot of the changes that were made initially sort of got swept aside for business as usual. And I mean, some people may not agree with that. And there might be companies that it was different, but I mean, that's kind of like, that's what I felt. And I do think that because it's such a tsunami of change, and I use that word not lightly, it's a slow moving, very impactful new set of rules that are just washing over us over months. this is going to stick. The major changes are going to stick this time around.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm guessing. Who knows? We'd be talking a year from now and be like, oh, that didn't happen.
Yeah, that was so stupid. Why did I say
Why
that?
did we think that? People never
I shouldn't have said
change.
that. So Michael, here's the thing that makes me think that this is more of a permanent change, is just in the fact that the way it's impacted our economy and the businesses that are around us is going to be pretty substantial at this point. And technology has a lot to do with that now. I mean, when you're watching TV now and you see an advertisement for a new movie, what are they saying now? In theaters or on demand. So you can actually order the movies that are out there in theaters on your TV right now in the comfort of your living room so that you don't have to go there. Do you think that people are going to actually say, oh, that was sucky, I don't want to do that anymore, I want to go to the theater? Occasionally they will. But the convenience of being able to say, hey, I wanted to see that movie, but you know what? I can't get a babysitter or something now. I want to see it now. That's going to impact our theater. The fact that our restaurants have been closed, a lot of the restaurants that we're used to going to, a lot of them, unfortunately, I don't think are going to survive the environment that we're in at this point. And with that in mind, that's going to change how we operate from that level as well. So I think some of the changes that have come into place from this are going to be very, very long-term in this particular case. And as I said, we're creatures of habit. And once we get that 21 days in, and we've been doing this for 21 days, bam, it's going to set. And that's just something we evolve with, or we just fight against until we get it changed again.
No, I totally agree. It's funny because I'm wrapping this up. You know, even before all this struck, getting to the movie theater, it seemed harder just because can't you just start it when we get there? Like
right.
you started actually thinking that.
Right.
And there you go. Like, you know, why do I have to get there at 3:30? And then even then there's 2 hours of previews before the movie starts.
Yep, exactly. So, I'm going to get popcorn.
Right. So, I mean, maybe we do this again and
sure.
touch base every few weeks and talk about like how things are changing and what we're seeing. Because we could probably talk for hours about what's going on, but we're out of time. But Jack, thank you so much. So informative. Really, really loved having you on the show.
It was my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Thanks again to Jack Recinto for talking to us about this great migration, the transition. A lot of us working from home, doing our part, social distancing. You're going to be listening to this a few months from now thinking, man, I remember those days. But you know, it's funny. This has come up a few times where it's suggested that if you can get your work done in 4 hours, then you're good for the day. Now, maybe it's just me, but I have never had a job where I could get everything done in 4 hours. And let me tell you, I work fast. Of course, I'm in creative. I think the last time I had a job where it was very rigid and structured and had quotas to meet was Radio Shack back in 1998. But that's what I love about this podcast, is that we can bring you a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different ideas, and you can take with you what you want and leave behind what you don't. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back. We'll be back with Jack. He's got more to tell us about legacy systems and migrating them into something more modern. You don't want to miss it. You've been listening to Recalibrate and Go, brought to you by Aptude, bringing you the knowledge you need to keep ahead of the curve. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and check out our website, aptude.com. We got a great blog with some great writers. If you're one of those lucky people that can work 4 hours a day and get all your work done, well, you got a lot of time on your hands. So I suggest you take a look at our blog, take a look at our website, see what we can do for you. We're Aptude. I'm Michael Foster. Thanks again for listening.